Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, where we dive into the most fascinating and exciting Nollywood movie stories. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our latest stories. Trust me, you'll want to stay tuned for more. Today we have an incredible story that's going to keep you hooked from start to finish. It's packed with drama, suspense, and everything that makes Nollywood so thrilling. So grab a seat, relax, and let's jump right into this captivating story that I know you're going to love. In the lively and beautiful city of Lagos, there was a famous school called Bright College. It was known for providing the best education in the area, and every parent wanted their child to study there. The students of Bright College were always top performers, known for their intelligence and discipline. Mr. and Mrs. Clinton, like many other parents, wanted the best for their only son, Jaden, and decided to enroll him in the prestigious school. When Jaden heard the news, he was overjoyed. He had always dreamed of attending Bright College. He thanked his parents with a wide grin, barely able to contain his excitement. He couldn't wait to tell his friends about the big news, but something lingered in the back of his mind, a strange sense of curiosity. Everyone spoke so highly of the school, but why did it seem like no one ever talked about what happened inside? Early on Monday morning, Jaden was already up and dressed, waiting eagerly for his father to drop him off at his new school. Mr. Clinton drove him through the busy streets, and soon they reached Bright College. The large gates loomed ahead, as if guarding the secrets of the prestigious institution. After completing the formalities at the principal's office, where Mr. Thompson greeted them with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, Jaden was led to his new classroom. His teacher, Mr. Samuel, introduced him to the class, and the students welcomed him warmly. Yet Jaden couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, like the air in the room held a tension he couldn't explain. Throughout the day, Jaden tried to focus on his lessons, but he felt like he was being watched, not by the students or the teachers, but by something unseen, something lurking. He dismissed it as first-day jitters and tried to focus on Mr. Samuel, who was both funny and an amazing teacher. As the day went on, Jaden started to feel more at ease, but during break time, as he sat alone in the classroom eating his lunch, a shadow crossed the doorway. It was Amika, one of his classmates. He smiled warmly and asked if Jaden would like to be friends. Jaden agreed, relieved to finally have someone to talk to. But before Ameka could sit down, a low, strange noise echoed from the hallway. Ameka froze for a second, his expression unreadable, before laughing it off and saying it was probably the wind. Jaden chuckled nervously, but deep down he knew something wasn't right. That night, Jaden couldn't wait for his parents to return from work so he could tell them about his first day at Bright College. But as usual, Mr. and Mrs. Clinton were caught up in their jobs and returned home late, well after Jaden had fallen asleep. They were loving parents, but they often left Jaden under the care of his nanny, providing everything for him except their time and attention. The next morning, the school bus came to pick Jaden up. He waved goodbye to his parents and boarded the bus with Amika and the other students. As they drove through the city streets, Jaden noticed that some of the students were unusually quiet, their faces tense. Once they arrived at school, the students gathered at the assembly ground for the usual morning address by the principal. This time, however, something felt different. The air was thick with unspoken tension, and even Mr. Thompson's usual speech seemed more serious, as if he were hiding something behind his polite words. Classes began, and once again, Mr. Samuel captivated the students with his engaging lessons. Jaden found himself drawn into the stories, especially during Christian religious studies. Mr. Samuel had a unique way of explaining Bible stories, making them feel real and vivid. But then, in the middle of one of his stories, the lights flickered, and for a brief moment, the entire room plunged into darkness. When the lights returned, Mr. Samuel continued as if nothing had happened, but Jaden saw it, just for a split second. Something had changed. There was a strange look in Mr. Samuel's eyes, something Jaden couldn't quite place. Was it fear or something else? The students exchanged uneasy glances, but no one said a word. Jaden's heart raced and he felt a chill run down his spine. Was this just a power outage, or was it something more? Why did no one seem to talk about it afterward? Jaden tried to shake the feeling, but as the days passed, strange things continued to happen. Odd noises in the hallways, flickering lights, and an ever-growing sense that Bright College was hiding something. Despite the excellent education and the friendly students, Jaden couldn't help but feel there was more to this school than met the eye. Something lurking in the shadows, watching him and his friends. The term at Bright College finally came to an end, and Jaden, as usual, excelled in all his exams. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Clinton, were extremely proud of his performance. As a reward, they decided to buy him a brand new iPhone 12. This gift made Jaden feel on top of the world, especially since he was the only one in his class with such an expensive phone. His excitement was uncontainable, and he couldn't wait for school to resume just to show off his new iPhone to his best friend, Emeka. However, during the holiday break, Jaden often found himself feeling lonely. His parents were busy with work as usual, leaving him in the care of the nanny. One Friday evening, Jaden gathered the courage to express his feelings to his mother. "Mom, I feel so alone when you're not around. The house is so boring without you and Dad," he said. Mrs. Clinton, though tired from her demanding job, listened to her son with understanding. "I'm sorry, Jaden. I know it's not easy for you, but work has been really busy. I promise to make it up to you," she said, with a smile that was both loving and apologetic. True to her word, the very next day, Mrs. Clinton arranged for Jaden's nanny and the drivers to take him to the amusement park. While Jaden was excited, part of him still felt incomplete. He wished his mother could come along. Despite that, he was happy to be getting out of the house for a change. At the park, Jaden had a blast, running around with other kids, going on rides, and feeling alive again. It was a welcome escape from the quiet, lonely days at home. After what felt like an endless holiday, school finally resumed. Jaden returned to Bright College with renewed energy, and the first thing he did was run up to Emeka to tell him all about his holiday and his new phone. "Emeka, you won't believe it. My parents got me an iPhone 12 for acing my exams," Jaden exclaimed, showing off the sleek device. Emeka was genuinely happy for his friend, amazed at how lucky Jaden was. They spent the day catching up, sharing stories, and, as always, doing their classwork together. Their bond had grown even stronger over time, and they became inseparable at school. As the new term progressed, the school held a Parents Teachers Association (PTA) meeting, and all the parents were in attendance, including Mrs. Clinton. After the principal, Mr. Thompson, delivered his address, Mrs. Clinton took the opportunity to speak with Mr. Samuel, Jaden's class teacher. "Mr. Samuel, I just wanted to thank you for your hard work. Jaden passed all his exams, and I believe it's because of your excellent teaching," she said warmly. Mr. Samuel smiled humbly and thanked her for the kind words. "I do my best, ma'am. Jaden is a very bright boy," he replied. Mrs. Clinton continued, "You've done such a great job with him. I trust you to keep him on the right track. Please treat him like your own child and correct him when necessary." Mr. Samuel reassured her, "I will do my very best, Mrs. Clinton. Jaden is a good boy and I'm happy to guide him." They exchanged pleasantries and Mrs. Clinton left to rejoin the meeting. During the PTA meeting, the principal announced an upcoming inter-school competition that Bright College would be participating in. The competition was a prestigious event, with schools from all over the state competing for academic awards. Jaden was one of the students selected to represent the school in this competition. Mr. Thompson encouraged all the parents to ensure their children prepared well at home, as the school was already doing its part to ready them for the challenge. Hearing this, Mrs. Clinton's pride for her son grew even more. She beamed with excitement, knowing Jaden was among the best. As the meeting ended, she approached Mr. Samuel with another request. "Mr. Samuel, I know you're very busy, but would you be willing to give Jaden some extra lessons? I want him to be fully prepared for the competition, but my work schedule is so tight that I don't have enough time to help him," she said. Mr. Samuel seemed oddly pleased with the request, his smile lingering just a little too long. "Of course, Mrs. Clinton, I'd be more than happy to help Jaden with extra lessons," he responded enthusiastically, almost as if he had been waiting for this opportunity. Mrs. Clinton was relieved that he accepted so easily. She thanked him sincerely before rushing off to work, unaware of the strange feeling that had settled in the air. As Jaden continued to attend these extra lessons with Mr. Samuel after school, things seemed to take a slightly unusual turn. Mr. Samuel was always friendly and kind, but Jaden began to notice subtle changes. Sometimes he would catch Mr. Samuel watching him with an expression that was hard to read, something between pride and something else, something unsettling. One evening, while Jaden was packing up his books, he overheard Mr. Samuel talking quietly on the phone. He couldn't hear everything, but the words competition, special students, and opportunity sent a chill down his spine. Jaden brushed it off as nothing, but a growing feeling of unease began to creep into the back of his mind. What exactly was Mr. Samuel planning for this competition, and why did he seem so eager to be close to Jaden? Little by little, Jaden's once happy and exciting school life was starting to feel like it was leading to something bigger, something unknown, and something dangerous lurking just beneath the surface. As the school term at Bright College progressed, Jaden's relationship with Mr. Samuel became increasingly strange. Mr. Samuel frequently called on Jaden in class, and although Jaden always answered correctly, there was something about the teacher's attention that started to feel uncomfortable. Over time, Jaden noticed that Mr. Samuel seemed to favour him more than the other students, but he couldn't understand why. One day after class, Mr. Samuel sent for Jaden to come to his office. Jaden assumed it was for a normal errand, so he went without hesitation. He knocked on the door, entered the office, and greeted Mr. Samuel. "Good afternoon, sir. You sent for me?" Mr. Samuel, smiling from behind his desk, replied, "Yes, Jaden. Please, have a seat." Jaden sat down, and Mr. Samuel offered him a snack, trying to make him feel comfortable. Jaden accepted it politely, though he was starting to feel uneasy. As he ate, Mr. Samuel stood up and approached him, touching his face lightly and making comments about his appearance. Jaden's discomfort grew quickly. He tried to leave, but Mr. Samuel blocked his way, telling him to calm down. Jaden's heart raced as he began to realise that something was wrong. Mr. Samuel's behaviour had turned threatening. Jaden wanted to scream, but fear held him back. When Mr. Samuel raised his voice and intimidated Jaden, the boy's panic deepened. The situation escalated beyond Jaden's control, and he left the office that day with a heavy, unspoken burden on his shoulders. After that incident, Jaden's life took a dark turn. He became withdrawn, isolated from his best friend Emeka, and started struggling with his schoolwork. Mr. Samuel continued to intimidate him, threatening him to stay silent about what had happened. Jaden felt trapped in his fear, unable to speak out. He tried to confide in his mother, but she was too busy to listen, leaving him feeling completely alone. Jaden's behaviour at home changed drastically. He refused to go to school, hoping it would force his mother to notice that something was wrong. But Mrs. Clinton, focused on her career, dismissed his reluctance as an excuse to skip school. She insisted he go back, unknowingly sending him into the hands of the very person he feared. One day, overwhelmed by his emotions, Jaden made a desperate decision. He secretly took a kitchen knife with him to school, hiding it in his uniform. When Mr. Samuel called him to the office once again, Jaden acted on the impulse that had been building inside him. With trembling hands and a heart full of fear, Jaden used the knife to protect himself. Mr. Samuel cried out in pain, and the commotion quickly drew the attention of other teachers and students. They rushed to the office and found Mr. Samuel injured, with Jaden standing nearby, shaking and covered in blood. The situation erupted into chaos, and the truth of the terrible events began to unravel. As the investigation unfolded, Jaden's story came to light. What had started as a seemingly normal school experience had turned into a nightmare that no one had anticipated. The impact of that day would leave a lasting scar on Jaden's life, and it would take time for the full truth to emerge. Jaden's brave decision to defend himself in the only way he knew how would lead to a reckoning for those involved, but the emotional wounds left behind would take much longer to heal. The once bright student had been forced to confront a situation far beyond his years, and the consequences would ripple through his life and the lives of those around him. After the shocking incident, chaos erupted at Bright College. The teachers and principals surrounded Jaden, their faces a mix of anger and disbelief. "You're an evil child, Jaden. How could you kill your teacher?" they shouted. Jaden stood there in silence, feeling a whirlwind of emotions: fear, guilt, and confusion. He wanted to explain but couldn't find the words. Deep down, he felt both relief and horror. Some students whispered among themselves, secretly pleased about Mr. Samuel's death, while others stared at Jaden in fear and disbelief. The principal quickly called Jaden's mother, Mrs. Clinton, to come to the school. By the time she arrived, Jaden had already been arrested and taken away. When Mrs. Clinton learned that her only son had been detained, her heart sank. Panic gripped her as she rushed to the office, desperate to understand what had happened. As she stood there, memories flooded back. Jaden's cries for help, the times he had tried to talk to her about his struggles, and how she had brushed him off. She suddenly realised how neglectful she had been, often leaving him in the care of a nanny while focusing on her job. The weight of her realisation crushed her. "What have I done?" she thought, overwhelmed with guilt. She quickly called her husband, Mr. Clinton, to inform him of the dire situation. When he heard the news, he was thrown into chaos. "I'll finish this meeting and come home right away," he promised, his voice trembling with concern. Mrs. Clinton drove to the police station with the principal, her heart racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that her son was in grave danger. As they arrived, they saw Jaden through the bars of the cell, looking small and frightened. When Jaden saw his mother, tears filled his eyes. He rushed forward and pressed his hands against the cold metal bars. "Mom, you have to believe me. I didn't mean to hurt him. I was just trying to protect myself," he cried. With a heavy heart, Jaden began to narrate the horrifying events to his mother. For the first time, she believed him completely. The anguish and fear in her son's eyes told her everything. However, as Jaden finished his story, they both faced a harsh reality. There was no physical evidence to support his claims. Mrs. Clinton felt frustration and despair wash over her. She knew they needed help, so she contacted a lawyer to represent them and guide them through this nightmare. Determined to find evidence, Mrs. Clinton and her lawyer returned to Bright College. They hoped the CCTV footage would reveal the truth of what had transpired in Mr. Samuel's office. When they reached the school and requested the footage, they were met with another shocking revelation. The CCTV camera in Mr. Samuel's office had been covered with a piece of cloth, making it impossible to capture the events that unfolded. "This can't be happening," Mrs. Clinton thought, feeling the walls close in around her. She and her lawyer desperately searched for anything that could prove Jaden's innocence. They talked to students and teachers, hoping someone might have seen or heard something that could help. But the atmosphere in the school was thick with fear and no one wanted to speak up. As the days passed, the situation grew more complicated. Jaden remained in detention and the media caught wind of the story, framing him as a troubled child who had committed a terrible act. The headlines painted a grim picture and the community was divided. Some saw Jaden as a monster, while others questioned the circumstances leading up to the tragedy. Feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders, Mrs. Clinton refused to give up. With her lawyer's help, she began digging deeper into Mr. Samuel's past. They discovered troubling rumours about him, students who had complained about his behaviour, whispers of inappropriate actions, and a disturbing pattern that had been overlooked for too long. But even as they gathered this information, time was running out. The pressure mounted as the school administration pushed for harsh penalties against Jaden. Mrs. Clinton knew they needed a breakthrough soon, or her son would face severe consequences for a crime he didn't truly commit. The following day, Amika was at home when his mother decided to check his phone. As she scrolled through his messages and videos, her eyes widened in shock when she stumbled upon an inappropriate video showing the late Mr. Samuel with some of Amika's friends, including Jaden. She felt a wave of disbelief and horror wash over her as she realised the implications of what she was seeing. She demanded to speak with Amika about the video. "Amika!" she called, her voice trembling. "What is this video doing on your phone?" Amika, caught off guard, sat up straight. His expression changed from surprise to fear. "Mom, please let me explain," he stammered. He took a deep breath and began to share everything he knew about Mr. Samuel. He told her that Jaden had been isolating himself and that he sensed something was wrong. He recounted how he had followed Jaden one day when Mr. Samuel called him to his office. Hidden away, he had witnessed the disturbing encounter and secretly recorded it, hoping to have proof if things ever went too far. Ameka continued, "Jaden isn't the only one. There are other boys. Mr. Samuel threatened us to keep quiet. We were all scared of what he would do if we spoke out." Ameka's mother was horrified. She realized that Jaden was not just a troubled boy, he was a victim of a predator. Determined to uncover the truth, she decided to take action. She would not let her son or Jaden suffer because of Mr. Samuel's actions. Ameka's mother presented the video as evidence in court, but the response was not what she had hoped for. The judge dismissed the footage, saying it was not enough to prove Jaden's innocence. They claimed she was trying to tarnish the reputation of someone who could no longer defend himself. Ameka's mother felt frustrated and defeated, but she refused to give up. She believed in her son and knew that they needed more evidence. That same day, she returned to Bright College, her mind racing with ideas. While walking through the school grounds, she overheard some students chatting excitedly. To her shock, they were celebrating the death of Mr. Samuel, laughing and discussing how relieved they felt that he was gone. Ameka's mother approached them cautiously, sensing their fear. "I know you're scared," she said gently, "but you need to tell me the truth about what happened. You are not alone, and I can help you." At first, the students hesitated, glancing at each other nervously. But with encouragement, they began to open up. They shared stories of how Mr. Samuel had manipulated and threatened them, just like he had done to Jaden. They spoke of how they felt trapped in silence, fearing for their safety. Ameka's mother listened intently, her heart breaking for these boys who had suffered in silence. Ameka's mother rallied the students together, urging them to testify in court about their experiences with Mr. Samuel. With newfound courage, they agreed. They realized that speaking out could not only help Jaden, but also protect others from suffering the same fate. They were tired of living in fear. When they entered the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. Ameka's mother presented the boys' testimonies, recounting their traumatic experiences and detailing Mr. Samuel's manipulative behavior. The judge listened carefully, the gravity of the situation evident in the room. As the students shared their stories, the tide began to turn. Their bravery moved the courtroom. The judge took their words seriously and started to see the pattern of misconduct that had been hidden for too long. After hearing the evidence, the judge ruled in Jaden's favour. While he recognised that Jaden had acted out of self-defence, he also acknowledged the deep scars left by Mr. Samuel's actions. In the end, Jaden was not sentenced to prison but instead received a recommendation for rehabilitation, where he could get the help he needed to heal from his trauma. The judge emphasised that it was crucial for him to recover in a supportive environment, away from the pressures of school. As the courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and applause, Mrs. Clinton embraced her son, tears of joy streaming down her face. Ameka stood by Jaden, feeling proud of their courage to speak out. The boys had finally found their voices, and the darkness of their past was beginning to lift. With the truth finally out, the community began to heal. Students and parents came together to support each other, ensuring that such a tragedy would never happen again. Jaden, Ameka, and the other boys formed a bond through their shared experience, promising to look out for one another and be advocates for those who couldn't speak up. As the story came to a close, hope replaced despair. Jaden was on the path to recovery, and the students who had once been afraid began to feel safe again. They knew that together they had the power to change their school for the better, creating an environment where every child felt valued and protected. Thanks for watching, everyone. I believe you enjoyed this interesting Nollywood movie storyline. We would love to hear your thoughts about this movie in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel to get more of our latest Nollywood movie stories.